Hello and welcome to Frap Talks, where we discuss anything related to modular synthesis with Frap Tools instruments. Today we will focus on FALISTRI and we will see how its capabilities of generating and handling gates can create some music, even without the standard ideas of melody and notes. First of all, an overview of FALISTRI. It has 5 sections. 2 control voltage generators, which are yellow and green, a dual cascaded frequency divider, which is gray, a 4-quadrant multiplier, which is red, and a linear slew limiter, which is blue. The primary function of FALISTRI is to generate control voltages that change over time. They can be momentary, such as envelopes, or continuous, such as LFOs or audio rate oscillators. Gates have a role in each of these functions, but the most crucial one is when FALISTRI is used as an envelope generator. An envelope is a control voltage that creates a continuous transition from a low value to a high one and back again. These transitions are called stages, and an envelope can have as many stages as the manufacturer wants. Envelopes are the primary tool for adding dynamics to our patches. Besides defining the duration of our musical events, such as their beginning and their end, they can control their amplitude and the way they evolve over time. At its most basic form, an envelope can have only 2 stages, one rising and one falling. In this case, a timing pulse starts the first stage, which is the rising one. It usually begins at 0 volt and ends around 10. As soon as the rising stage has reached its highest value, it triggers the falling one, which brings the voltage back to 0. When controlling the amplitude of a sound, for example, a 2-stage envelope defines its attack and its decay. To engage this kind of envelopes, a short timing pulse is more than enough, and these timing pulses are often called Trigs. The main limitation of 2-stage envelope is that you cannot have control over the duration of your sound, which will always correspond to the sum of the rising and falling times. If you want more control over your sound, such as being able to arbitrarily define the duration of your notes, you will need a 3-stage envelope, which is often called AHR, which stands for Attack, Hold and Release. A 3-stage envelope requires a gate to operate properly. To activate FALISTRI's envelopes, you can use an external gate generator such as the USTA sequencer, but you can also use the 2 buttons, yellow and green, to internally generate a gate signal. Such a gate transition from low to high activates the rising stage, and when it has reached its highest value, it stays there until the gate is high. When the gate's value returns low, the envelope begins its falling stage. Now things will get more interesting. While generating an envelope, let it be 2 or 3 stage, FALISTRI is actually doing more things under the hood, one of which is generating 2 parallel streams of gates, which are called end of rise and end of fall. The end of rise outputs a gate high signal once the envelope has reached the end of its rising stage. Such a gate stays high for the whole duration of the hold stage if present, and for the whole duration of the falling stage. Once the falling stage has ended, this gate will return low, and will stay low until a new rising segment will end. End of fall, on the other hand, will output a gate high signal once the envelope has reached the end of its falling stage, and such a gate will stay high until a new rising stage will begin again. At this point, the gate will become low and will stay low until another envelope will end. And now we will see how these 2 gate outputs can have a crucial role in our patches. In this patch here, we are using CVA of the USTA sequencer to control the brainsaw oscillator and the gate A to trig the yellow envelope on the FALISTRI, which is set to work in hold mode. First of all, we are gonna take the inverted envelope and patch it to the wave folder CV input of the brainsaw oscillator. This will give us a sort of ducking effect, which will retain the length information displayed by the USTA sequencer. Then we are gonna take the end of rise gate and we are gonna patch it to the source knob. Finally, we are gonna take the end of fall gate output and patch it to the ping input of the brainsaw oscillator. These 2 gates will extract more rhythmic information from the single timing pulse coming from the USTA sequencer. Their relationship depends exclusively on the timing of the rising and falling edges that we set our envelope to work to. The relationship between end of rise and end of fall becomes way more fascinating when both the generators, the yellow and green one, are engaged in the so-called quadrature mode. To activate the quadrature mode, we must set the green generator to hold and set the Q switch on the right. The yellow generator can have any of the three available play mode, and they will affect the overall behavior of the quadrature, but for now, let's stick to the hold one for both generator. In this mode, the end of an envelope stage marks the beginning of a stage on the other envelope, in a sort of chain of interdependent events. The quadrature begins when the yellow generator starts its raising stage. At this moment, the yellow end of fall gate goes low. Then, the yellow raising stage ends. At this moment, the yellow end of rise gate goes high, and the green generator begins its raising stage, thus making its end of fall gate going low as well. Once the green raising segment has ended, the green end of rise gate goes high. The yellow generator stays high for the whole duration of the green raising stage, and also for the whole duration of its incoming gate signal, if longer. After the yellow envelope has ended its falling stage, the end of rise gate goes low, the end of fall gate goes high, and the green generator begins its falling stage. Finally, when the green falling stage has ended, the green end of rise gate goes back to low and the green end of fall goes back to high. The most common use of quadrature mode is to create multi-stage envelopes through FALISTRI's max output, but we will cover this in another video. Since today we are talking about gates, we will see how to use the 4 gate outputs of FALISTRI's in quadrature mode to create more interesting rhythms. For dispatch, we have set the yellow generator in loop mode, so that the quadrature will retrig itself at every cycle. We have patched the 4 gate outputs to 4 individual bands CV in on the Fumana. This creates a rhythmic pattern that will change as we change the rising and falling stage of the yellow and green envelopes. There is another section of FALISTRI that generates gates, and it is the dual cascaded frequency divider. Here's how it works. You can patch any signal to its input, and whenever a rising edge or a low to high transition is detected, the gate output will change its state, from low to high or from high to low. It is called frequency divider because to output a full timing pulse, which goes from low to high or from high back to low, you will need 2 timing pulses, since it changes its states only with raising edges. And it is called cascaded because the output of the first flip-flop is semi-normal to the input of the second one. In this way, if you patch a constant stream of timing pulses to the input of the first flip-flop, you will get a division by 2 from the first output and by 4 from the second one. And since the flip-flop requires just the rising stage of a timing pulse to change its state, we can use Trigs to generate gates. In this patch, we are using the Trigs coming from Sapel's clock output to generate some gates that will be respectively half and a quarter of the clock speed. Things become more interesting when we use Sapel's random clock output, especially in less than mode. In this mode, the clocks will be less than the main clock and they will be picked at random, but they will always be in sync. We can use this random clock to trigger the dual cascaded frequency divider, and in this way we will obtain some streams of gates that will change their state from low to high and vice versa at random points, but still in sync with the main clock. This will create some interesting and ever-changing rhythms. Another idea is to patch any of the end-of-rise or end-of-fall outputs of FALISTRI in Quadrature mode to an input of the dual cascaded frequency divider, and this will give us another source of rhythm that we can use in other points of our patch. Finally, there is another control of FALISTRI that can work with the gate signal, and it is the forced loop input. Whenever a generator is set to transient or hold mode, any gate high signal patched to its input will force its behavior to loop, let it be at audio rate or not. Okay, so here we patched Sapel's main clock output to the input of the first frequency divider. We have set the yellow generator to transient mode, and we have patched the output of the second frequency divider to the yellow forced loop input. In this way, the second frequency divider will change its state every 2 clocks from Sapel, and it will force the yellow generator to loop. We then patched the yellow generator's unipolar output to the wavefolder CV input of the Brainsaw oscillator. Another thing that we can do is to patch the output of the first frequency divider to the Brainsaw's ping input.